Yeah, so it's a very special subject today. I'm really fascinated by this subject, but let's see what
Well,
Ivana
I
is
have
going to
a
tell us.
question.
So just a moment, I'm just organizing YouTube here and
Mhm.
I'm muting it so that it doesn't disturb us. And then, yeah, like that. So it's being streamed. And and mm, mm. Okay, and so now it's being recorded. Okay, friends, so welcome to this webinar about using herbs as an assistance to our fasting. And we have Ivana here. So first of all, this webinar has been organized within the framework of the weekly fasting group. And it's a very special international WhatsApp group. And it unites people who cultivate habit of fasting once a week between 24 and 36 hours. So if you want to join this group, you will have the details below this video. And today we have Ivana. She's a very special person with lots of knowledge. She's going to enlighten us on the subject of using herbs. What are herbs? How can we use them to assist ourselves in our fasting attempts, etc. So, Ivana, please enlighten us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me back. Before I start, I just want to see there are only 4 of you. How many of you guys actually use herbs to detox? Can you just raise your hands? I just want to see if we have, okay, Alexandra, great. Okay, so obviously detoxification means removal of toxins. And the body gets rid of toxic waste through the bowels, urine, lungs, and skin. One of the ways we detox in order to heal and increase our energy and vitality is through fasting. There are different levels of fasting. As you know, there is juice fasting, water fasting, and dry fasting. And the more intense and difficult the level of fasting, the deeper the cleansing and healing that can be achieved as a result of this process. For example, with hard dry fasting, you have elimination that is sort of self-contained. Because hard dry fasting eliminates all digestion, including through the skin, meaning we are not applying anything to the skin and we're not allowing the water to touch the skin. It produces the least amount of byproducts that need to be eliminated from the body via the normal channels of waste removal. But even with dry fasting, we still have eliminations of urine. We also eliminate through the skin and mucosa. And obviously, the better our eliminative organs perform, the more garbage we're able to remove at any given time. So today I wanted to talk about how we can optimally support our body's ability to remove harmful chemicals and residues, which is especially relevant in juice and water fasting, where you still have some level of digestion and metabolic processes. But I also want to say that we can't be so single-minded as to focus on fasting only when it comes to detox, because fasting happens only during a very narrow window. And most people in this group only fast once per week. So what happens the rest of the time when we are not fasting? I would argue that the time in between the fasts is equally, if not more important, because what we do outside of that fasting window has a huge impact on the quality and the efficacy of the fasts that follow. And besides, wouldn't you want to keep your body in the state of detoxification all the time and not just during the fast itself? Because if you're only cleaning the body while fasting, then getting healthy is going to take you a very, very long time. So how do we maximize our healing? First, it's important to understand the mechanism of detoxification as well as the function of the specific organs and glands that are involved in this process. I want to start with the gastrointestinal tract, or GI tract for short. The GI tract could be viewed as the core of the body, or as Dr. Morse likes to call it, the trunk of the tree. Morse's mentor, Dr. Jensen, who is known as sort of the father of American iridology, discovered that 2 weeks after a human embryo is created, it starts forming a primitive gut tube along with its nervous system, which points to the intimate relationship between the bowel and nerve tissues. So that tiny shrimp-like embryonic shape that you have seen in your biology class is actually the beginning stages of our GI tract formation. In other words, the GI tract is the very first organ that is formed when the cells of the embryo start dividing and multiplying. And within 4 weeks of this process, lung and liver buds begin to bulge out from the gut and nerve tissue. And then by week 6, most of the other organs sprout from the gut in the same fashion. Another thing Jensen noticed was that these budding organs were covered with the same membrane that made up the bowel and nerve tissue. This means that all of our organs are enveloped in the membrane that's made of that gut tissue. And this is where Dr. Jensen came to realize that genetic weaknesses are passed down through the gut and nerve tissue, which later becomes the membrane covering the organs. So wherever there is an inherent weakness in the bowel, the organs that develop from that part of the bowel will also have an inherent weakness. I think this is truly fascinating. The fact is that our GI tract is intimately connected to every single organ in our body through nerve and lymph channels. For example, the transverse colon is connected to the head. And when it gets backed up with toxic matter, those toxins will actually start seeping into the brain and affecting its function. So this is where you would get headaches, brain fog, dizziness, reduced eye-hand coordination, and so on. And this is why it is often said that all disease starts in the gut. If your GI tract is loaded with old stagnant waste, over time this structure will begin to break down and get damaged, which then inevitably will lead to the breakdown of the organs that are associated with the corresponding sections of the intestine. That's why one of the most important things we have to focus on during detox is cleaning out our gut. Unfortunately, most people don't move their bowels regularly enough and are chronically constipated. What's worse is that they're not even aware that they're constipated because of the stupidity of so many medical professionals. I know a woman who goes to the bathroom once every 7 to 10 days, and her doctor told her that it's normal. Personally, I cannot imagine what it feels like to hold digestive waste for a week, let alone for 10 days. But this guy told my friend that everyone is different and that what's normal and healthy varies from person to person. He said that some people may go every day, while others will only go once every few days or once a week. And it's okay because it's their normal. And he told her that her normal is every 10 days because that's just how her body works. And of course, now she doesn't want to listen to me because she chooses to believe her doctor. Now, you may be going every day and still be constipated because the rule of thumb is that we should be going at least as many times as we eat. So we should be having a bowel movement within an hour of having had a meal. So let's say if you eat 3 meals a day and only have one bowel movement, within a week, you're going to get backed up by 14 meals. So you should know that the average person walking around is backed up by about 12 meals. That's a lot. And what happens when this toxic waste sits in our large intestine for so long? Nothing good, that's what. It simply continues to sit there and rot and putrefy, re-intoxicating the blood supply and also creating a backflow through the lymph vessels into our organs. Because remember, our organs are directly hooked into our GI tract. To help mitigate this, you can definitely do enemas and they can be helpful, but enemas have some drawbacks. One is that they don't really reach far enough into the colon to remove everything completely. And two, over time, you can actually become dependent on them, where you will have to continue to keep doing them just so you can eliminate from the bowels. So that's not optimal. One way to ensure that our bowels are moving and eliminating properly is with the help of herbs. However, I do want to caution you here against the use of laxatives, such as senna or Turkey rhubarb. Because even though these are natural plants, they still act like microtoxins in the body. You see, the body perceives them as poisons and thus initiates a purging reaction by forcefully spasming the bowel in order to quickly get rid of them. It's the same principle as when you eat contaminated food and get food poisoning. And that's why this type of waste removal is usually uncomfortable. So you would get diarrhea and cramping when you take laxatives, and that's why. And another thing is that laxatives are also habit forming and will create a dependency with continued use. So our objective when cleaning up the gut should be promoting elimination by stimulating peristalsis rather than creating a scaled down form of food poisoning. Those of you who are familiar with Dr. Morse may know about his line of herbs that are called cellular botanicals. And he created a range of 6 bowel formulas called GI Renew. And his herbal blends are actually based on this principle. These are not laxatives. And out of these formulas, you would choose the one that's right for you based on your level of regularity. Now, if you cannot get this specific brand where you live, because this is an international group where there are people from all over the world and they may not have access to these herbs, then my recommendation would be to take a combination that includes herbs like Cascara sagrada, aloe, ginger, plantain leaf, slippery elm, marshmallow root, and white oak bark. So you have the three movers there: cascara, aloe, and ginger. These are the things that stimulate the bowel to move. Then you have the anti-inflammatories, these slippery elm and marshmallow root. And these are really great if you suffer from any inflammatory conditions of the bowel, such as colitis, gastritis, or any ulcerations. Plantain leaf is a gentle lymphatic herb that, you know, offers you some pulling action on the lymph, because it's not enough to just remove the waste from the intestinal tubing. We also have backed up lymphatic waste around all the individual cells that make up the intestinal wall itself. And then the white oak bark, has a toning and tightening effect. And why would we need that? You ever see people with distended large bellies? And they can actually be really thin overall and just have this big bulge. And most of the time, this is because of the waste accumulation in their intestines. A person like that can easily carry 20 to 25 pounds of old fecal matter that's just sitting there. And as the waste just keeps backing up, then the intestinal tubing will start to stretch and expand to accommodate this bulk. So instead of being this wide, now it's this wide. And it's full of impacted feces. And this bulk and this weight can create sagging and even prolapsing of the transverse colon that sort of is supposed to hang horizontally underneath our rib cage. So the colon may sag or may completely prolapse, and then it sits on top of other organs, which puts pressure on the bladder, the uterus, and the sigmoid colon. And the sigmoid is the section of the large intestine that is sort of like the last stop for the waste matter before it gets eliminated through the anus. And if the prolapsed transverse colon, which is full of waste, is putting pressure on the sigmoid, then the elimination of that waste is going to be even further restricted. So it's going to be harder for us to go. This means that you will have to strain to make yourself go, right? Just trying to push that stool out. And this can lead to hemorrhoids and anal fissures. So once you can get rid of enough waste matter from your intestines, taking white oak bark will actually help shrink the intestinal tubing and restore the tone of the transverse colon so that it's not drooping or sagging. But let's not forget about the nervous system of the GI tract. I don't know if you know this, but our gut wall is made up of 200 million neurons. That's brain cells. So we literally have 200 million brain cells in the wall of our intestine. And that number of neurons is the equivalent of a dog's brain. Now, I don't know about you, but I'd say that dogs are pretty darn intelligent animals. So our gut is at least as smart as an average dog. And it constantly communicates with our larger brain through the vagus nerve. And that's how the brain receives the signals that you're hungry or that you're full. And these signals are very much dependent on our intestinal microflora. In other words, the creatures that live there. And this brings me to the issue of parasites. A lot of us were on the SAD diet, right? Diet of animal products and processed foods before we shifted to the raw plant-based lifestyle that also includes fasting. But our old diet had created an environment that attracted all kinds of harmful organisms that happened to have the same taste in food as we used to. And these bugs range from the tiny microscopic ones like bacteria and yeast to much, much larger specimens like flukes and worms. So when we stop eating toxic foods, those critters get really hungry and restless. And then they start sending signals to our brain that translate into cravings for the foods that we no longer want to eat or choose to eat. And this, of course, can make it very challenging for us to stick with our new diet because it feels like it's you who's craving pizza or burgers or ice cream. So what do? We have to kill them. And of course, we would use herbs for this. And there are a lot of different products available on the market, which usually contain black walnut hull, wormwood, fennel seed, male fern, which gets rid of the eggs, oil of oregano, paw d'arco, gentian root, garlic. I mean, there are many things you can use. You don't have to stick with one brand or the other. What you need to remember is that you have to take a parasitic formula for at least 3 weeks, then take a break for a month, and then go back for another 3 weeks to make sure that you kill off everything. Because when it comes to worms, these herbs only kill off the adults. And if there were eggs left or any larvae, within 3 to 4 weeks, they will hatch and start growing. And that's when these herbs will be effective again in getting rid of them. So as you see, the importance of GI tract in our overall health simply can't be stressed enough. How clean or how polluted the gut is will determine how successful your detox journey will be, and especially during fasting. Because if you are having or holding a lot of toxic waste in your intestines, it will be harder for you to fast because you are more likely to have headaches. Remember, the transverse colon connects to the head, and if we have toxic waste there, it's going to continue to intoxicate the head, and it's going to be much harder to control hunger and cravings. And by the way, speaking of bad breath, because this has been brought up within the group. So I wanted to say that bad breath is the result of a dirty bowel that's got decaying putrefactive matter in it. When I dry fast, I don't get bad breath, even though I've gone as long as 9 days without brushing my teeth. And that's because I've been aggressively cleaning my intestine nonstop for more than 3 years. And even though I've made some progress, I'm not even close to being done. That's the crazy thing. Most people seriously underestimate just how big a job gut cleansing really is. Just think about it. We have anywhere between 22 and 27 feet of intestines. And if we laid them out flat, they would cover the entire surface of a tennis court. I don't know if you know this, but your colon is as long as you're tall, which means that the taller you are, the longer your GI tract is. So that's just a little interesting fact for you. So despite all the work that I've done on my GI tract, I still get shocked by the stuff that keeps coming out of me 3 years later. All right. So if you think that going on one juice fast is going to get it done, it won't. But the point is that bad breath is not so much about the mouth and its bacteria, but more about the GI tract, unless, of course, you have decaying teeth, because, well, that would definitely be a contributing factor. And Dr. Morse has a different gut cleaning formula made with binders and psyllium husk, which is different from the regular GI formula that he has. And this specific formula is called GI Broom, and it is very, very astringent. It contains bentonite clay and charcoal, which bind to itself toxins and sort of pull things in magnetically. Everything sticks to these particles so that they can be removed. So it's another really good way to break up that waste and get it moving. All right, so if the bowel is our number one priority in detox, then kidneys aren't that far behind. And as important as the gut is, it only removes digestive waste. But then you also have 100 trillion other cells in your body, and every single one of them produces waste. Just as a result of its normal activity, nothing special, just by being alive and performing its functions, the cell is producing waste. And this waste needs to be removed, because if it doesn't get promptly removed, it will damage the cell and alter its function. And what are damaged cells? Damaged cells become cancer cells. You know, I see so many people with serious illnesses like cancer who go raw, but they don't get their remedy. And they're saying that the diet doesn't work. But this is not the problem. The reason for this is that they're not aware of the importance of kidney filtration. And filtration is the mechanism through which our kidneys remove cellular waste. If your kidneys are filtering, you're going to see sediment in your urine, which brings up another stupid thing that your doctor may have told you, namely that your urine should be clear, all right? But if urine is a waste product, then there should be waste in it, shouldn't it? Because if your urine is clear, then where did the waste go? What happened to it? And the crux of the problem is that it didn't go anywhere. and is still stagnating around your cells and damaging your organs. Because most people have either very poor filtration or none at all. The easiest way to check if you're filtering is to pee in a clear jar and let it sit for about 15-20 minutes. If you don't see a layer of sediment at the bottom of the jar, then you should know that you are not removing toxins from your body. Let me see if I can get a picture for you here on the screen of what kidney filtration looks like. Let me see. So I just press share screen, right? Oh, you said, it says you disabled screen sharing.
Really, it says that it's been disabled. Just a moment, I will try
Okay.
to. One participant can share at a time, multiple. Okay, how is it now?
Let's see. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right. So this was the first urine after I broke my 9-day dry fast. And I had some water and a blend of kidney, Helol, and 3-Long tea. And I didn't even have this jar sit, because you see the sediment didn't even settle. There are large chunks floating in the jar. So this is what it looks like when your kidneys are filtering and you're dumping old lymphatic waste. Okay, so when you look at your urine, this is how you know you're actually detoxing. All right, so how can I get out of the sharing stuff?
It has been ceased. Now we are seeing you.
Okay. Sorry, guys, I am not very technically savvy, so please bear with me. All right. So another thing I want to tell you is that the type of filtration I have just shown you, you're not going to see every single day, because detoxification and waste removal ebbs and flows, where we have periods where the body is simply hydrating that stagnant lymph, where it doesn't seem like much is happening, but you should still have sediment from whatever you have eaten that day, even if it's clean food. Because even if we eat clean food, there's still waste product associated with it. It just won't be as significant. And you will know the difference between filtering old stuff and just the stuff from what you have had that day is the color of the urine. So the old stuff will usually be really dark in color, whereas the regular days you'll have, it will be more of a normal color or a lighter color. Okay. And a lot of the times people conflate kidney filtration with detoxification. And I want to share something that I observed with myself, because I've heard people say, oh, I have avocado and avocados really make me filter. They get my lymph moving. And this is not the case. Avocados are actually mucus forming. So what you are seeing is not the lymph that's been hydrated and now is being removed. What you're saying is the new acids that were created in the body after consumption of acid ash forming foods. You know, some of the largest sediment dumps I've had when I cheated, and I had like French fries, right? Does this mean that French fries are making me detox and filter? No, But the good news is that the kidneys are doing their job and getting this stuff out of your body. Another thing that happens is that when you eat these types of foods, you will see that the sediment is really white in color. What I've come to understand is that this is actually minerals like calcium being removed out of our body. This is how we are losing our electrolytes. And how I realized this was because the jar, my pee jar, started to get that mineral buildup on the glass. And I was like, wait a minute, this means I am losing calcium. Because when we eat these acid ash forming foods, or we're very acidic, the body is going to trigger the calcium buffering mechanism, where it's going to start pulling calcium out of our bones and tissues to sort of alkalize the body and restore some sort of balance. So it's important that you understand that not everything that comes out in urine is a good thing, okay? Because you do not want to be losing your calcium, even though it looks in the jar as sediment, but it's not toxins you're removing. You're actually losing calcium. And this is how we lose our teeth and bones and so on. All right. So how do we get the kidneys working? Hard dry fasting is really quite good for opening up the kidneys. But juice and water fasting will actually place an additional burden on your already weak kidneys, making them worse. I've known people who got really bad kidney infections while water fasting, and it's really, really painful. What you have to understand is that going on a fruit diet or fasting on juice or water is going to mobilize stagnant lymph, which is obviously acidic and corrosive. But if this lymph has nowhere to go because the kidneys cannot remove it, then you're going to be in a world of hurt, because now these acids are all stirred up and now they're burning you from the inside out. So when our kidneys are weak and not filtering, we usually see skin issues or increased sweating, abnormal sweating. So this is where you're going to have rashes and breakouts of all kinds. Because when the kidneys can't do their job, then the body will try to eliminate this garbage through the skin. So things like eczema, psoriasis, and acne are all symptoms of blocked kidneys. You may even get cellulitis, which is a type of soft tissue infection that basically oozes burning, itchy lymph. In many cases, like my own, where I was actually in kidney failure, going on a fruit diet simply is not going to be sufficient. I was raw and on all fruit for 3 months, and I didn't filter a single day. Nada, nothing at all. So this means that even if your diet is perfect, you're still not getting anywhere in terms of detoxification, apart from maybe some expectoration through the skin, mucosa, and maybe, lungs. And that is if your skin is actually open and is able to eliminate some of these toxins. But I'll get to skin a little later. So until you get your kidneys filtering, all you're really doing is spinning your wheels and making wind. And this is where herbs can be real lifesavers. I really do love Dr. Morse's kidney formulas, and they're numbered 1 through 4, with the odd numbers 1 and 3 being for improved function and filtration, and the even numbers 2 and 4 being diuretics. And the higher the number, the more potent the formula. But if you can't get Morse's herbs, you can simply get teas or loose herbs such as couch grass, juniper berry, nettles, dandelion, parsley, very easy to come by, burdock, goldenrod. I mean, there are so many great kidney herbs that, you know, there's no point in me sitting here and reciting a list of herbs for you. You can easily find this information online. The important thing is that the sooner you start filtering, the sooner you will see your health improving. You'll start getting the inflammation out, you'll see your skin clear up, and you'll see your tumors shrink and disappear. I'd like to add another thing. Most of us have 2 kidneys, save for the instances of surgical removal or some congenital defect. And each of our kidneys only takes care of its side of the body. In most cases, people I work, including myself, one side is weaker than the other. And the kidney on the weaker side is usually going to have diminished filtration or no filtration at all. And that's why that side of the body will usually present with more or worse symptoms. So even if you do see sediment in your urine, you may only be detoxing on one side of your body. And it's impossible to tell just from looking at the urine if both of the kidneys are filtering. And if it's not the case, then you can't tell which one of them is and which one isn't. And one good way I know how to determine something like this would be to look at a person's eyes using iridology, because you'll be able to see which of your kidneys is the weaker one. Another thing I want to add is that don't forget that there's a connection and correlation between kidney function and the condition of our bowels. So the cleaner the gut, the better the filtration. In general, the success of your detox is really going to be dependent on how well you work on your bowels. Because once the bowels start to get clean, then everything else follows. Another key role in kidney filtration is played by the adrenal glands, which sit right on top of the kidneys. And you know, you may be doing everything right in terms of the diet and taking herbs and fasting, and still you may not be able to get your kidneys to filter if your adrenal glands are not performing properly, because adrenals turn on the kidneys. So let's talk about adrenals. Adrenal glands are small endocrine glands about the size of a walnut. Each gland has an outer cortex, which produces steroid hormones, and an inner medulla, which is the body's main source of adrenaline and noradrenaline. The importance of adrenal glands cannot be overemphasized or overestimated. As a part of our autonomic nervous system, they control a great deal of processes in our body. I'm going to try to tell you about them, and I hopefully won't forget any of them, because their scope of action is so wide-ranging. For example, our adrenals produce neurotransmitters that are in charge of stress management. That's our fight or flight response. They're also producing neurotransmitters that give us energy, keeping us alert and awake. And they also produce neurotransmitters that then let us go to sleep at night. I would also have you know that insufficient adrenal function is always at the center of allergies and asthma, because being a part of the autonomic nervous system, adrenals control breathing. You probably know that epinephrine, which is artificial adrenaline, is used in EpiPens and many allergy medications that are intended to open up the airways. And so people who have COPD or asthma or allergies, right away, you know that they have weak adrenals. In addition to controlling our breathing, they also produce anti-inflammatory steroids, whose action is mimicked by pharmaceuticals like cortisone and prednisone. So when people are given these, the question should be asked, why aren't your adrenals producing these neurotransmitters to mitigate the inflammation in the body? And of course, taking artificial steroids and hormones will only further suppress adrenal function. So people who have adrenal weakness to begin with, and then start taking these artificial substitutes, will find themselves in a very bad situation down the line. So what we have to do is really work on restoring the natural function of the adrenal glands. So then there's also elimination, which requires dopamine and acetylcholine to stimulate peristalsis in order to move the waste along the intestinal canal. And that's why when we get really stressed out, we get constipated. You know, like we travel and it's stressful and all of a sudden we can't go to the bathroom. Or you can have the opposite extreme where people just get diarrhea, they get so anxious. So when we have constipation as a result of stress, that is a symptom of weak adrenal gland. But when we have an adrenal gland that's in a state of acute inflammation, we're usually going to have the diarrhea effect. So neither extreme is good. You don't want the gland to be in a hyper state and be overstimulated. And obviously you don't want it to be hypo and underperforming. Adrenals also play a role in signaling to the pancreas. And that's why type 2 diabetes is known as neurological type, because it results from poor sugar metabolism due to adrenal weakness. And it's also one of the main reasons why people have such a hard time losing weight. In addition to sugar metabolism, adrenals are also involved in utilization of minerals via the production of mineral corticoids. And they're also involved in maintaining the sodium-potassium balance. So if you're like me and you love salt and get salt cravings all the time, that is a telltale sign of weak adrenals. Now, it's very common for us to feel weak, dizzy, and have trouble breathing when we transition from our set diet to the raw lifestyle. And the reason for this isn't that we aren't getting enough calories or nutrition. but because by eliminating animal products and cooked foods, we also remove the foods that act as stimulants. Of course, coffee and tea are the obvious culprits, but what you may not know is that meat and salt are some of the biggest stimulants as well. When we eat meat, protein is not the main thing that we get out of it. The thing that really gives us strength and energy are actually the neurotransmitters that had been stored in the animal's tissues. And the stimulant effect from the food that we used to eat has been artificially propping up our adrenal function, giving us a false sense of energy. So when we remove these foods from our diet, all of a sudden, we're going to be faced with the true state of our adrenal glands and the true level of their function or dysfunction in their natural, unadulterated state. When I first went raw many years back, I couldn't do it because I got so weak, I could hardly walk. I mean, I had to constantly stop and catch my breath, and my breathing was so labored, I felt like I was dying. So I thought to myself, I don't think I can do this. And this is what most people think. But the next time I made the transition, I had learned some things about the adrenal glands, and I was taking the herbs and I did not have these issues anymore. So to me, this proves beyond a shadow of the doubt that it's not the calories, it's not the protein, it's the adrenal weakness that makes us feel that way. Another thing that happens is that we feel dizzy and lightheaded, especially when we get up. Why is that? You see, adrenal glands also regulate blood pressure. So once again, if they're weak, we're not going to feel very stable. And this is especially true when we are fasting and not putting anything in our body at all that would sort of stimulate the adrenal glands and make them work better, right? And similarly, the general body weakness that we experience when fasting is because we're not producing enough neuromuscular neurotransmitters, which give our muscles that strength and endurance. So, as you can see, weak adrenals can affect us in so many different ways. And we can have one or some or maybe all of these symptoms when we shift to a raw diet and a fasting lifestyle. And so this is why it's absolutely vital that we provide herbal support for our adrenal glands, or we're going to have a really, really tough time fasting and detoxing. And I don't know anyone, and I mean anyone, who has good, strong adrenal glands. Usually it's not the question of if, but how bad are they really? Our adrenals are constantly taking hits because we live fast-paced lives in a world that's full of all kinds of stressors. And especially if you had traumatic experiences, maybe you had a difficult childhood where there was abuse, or if you are a soldier, you served in the military. That means that your fight or flight response had been consistently engaged for a very long period of time. It's like holding a fist really, really tight and not letting go. If you ever done this, if you really hold it for a long time and then you finally unclench the fist and then you try to pick something up, you're not going to be able to do it because your hand is going to be so tired. And this is sort of what happens to our adrenals. Now, I talked a lot about the problems caused by underactive adrenals, but in acute cases of lymphatic stagnation, they can actually be hyperactive, which would make a person feel jittery, anxious, and overstimulated. This would also cause sleep disruptions. So when taking adrenal glands, you want to keep this in mind because some herbs are energy promoting, like rhodiola, astragalus, and Siberian ginseng, while other herbs are more soothing and calming, like ashwagandha and holy basil and verbena. So keep that in mind. You don't want to take the wrong herb and become overstimulated or fall asleep in the middle of the workday. So a few other things I wanted to touch upon briefly are the other two methods of elimination, which are skin and lungs. So let's start with skin. Skin is the largest eliminative organ of the body and is often referred to as the third kidney. Our skin is really porous. It absorbs and it excretes. So, as I already said, when our kidneys are not working, then the skin is going to take on the burden of removing toxins from the body to the best of its ability. But sometimes the skin is sort of closed and backed up. And this happens when our thyroid gland is underactive, when it's in the hypo state, because our thyroid controls our body temperature. So if you cannot raise your temperature high enough, you're not going to be able to sweat. So if we have an issue with our skin, the way we go after it is actually through treating the thyroid gland.
Ivana, you got frozen.
Artificial.
Yeah.
It will actually destroy it over time. So consume iodine naturally occurs in plants such as bladderwrack,
Ivana, I'm sorry you got frozen.
All right, so something happened.
Yes, it looks like now it's fine again. So could you please repeat what you said, what you were talking about in the last 2 minutes, more or less?
Oh, well,
Yeah,
how far?
it was about a minute and a half, 2 minutes maybe that we couldn't.
So how far did I get with you? What's the last thing?
Thyroid gland. That's what you said, and then we.
All right. So the way to actually go after our skin is by fixing our thyroid gland, because our thyroid gland, through its function of temperature regulation of the body enables us to sweat. When the thyroid is hypoactive, we usually get really cold, right? We get cold hands and feet, and generally it's very hard for us to get warm. So we have to sort of bump up that function so that our temperature rises enough for us to be able to sweat. And in order to do that, you're going to have to take some herbs, because while detox will fix the thyroid gland as well, but it will take so long that by the time you get there, you may lose bone and enamel, because thyroid is also vital in calcium utilization, and your skin is not going to be where it needs to be. So detox itself, if we're just waiting to detox these glands to regenerate their function, we're going to be suffering needlessly. So the herbs create a shortcut for us. They give us the support we need until we regenerate our body and our organs. So it is never the intention for us to stay on herbs indefinitely. They're only to be with us temporarily as we clean our body, we heal our body, and once we're healed, we no longer need them. So I would caution everyone not to take iodine for your thyroid that's inorganic or synthetic, artificial. You want to get your iodine from natural sources like kelp, bladderwrack, and Irish moss. There are a lot of herbs that support gland function, such as schizandra, vitex, saw palmetto, hishu wu, which is a Chinese herb, Siberian ginseng, and prickly ash bark. You can research this. You can also get Dr. Morse's formula specifically designed for thyroid and skin. The second thing I wanted to mention is our lungs. We accumulate a lot of mucus in our lungs and our sinuses. And one of the ways we detox them, and the only way we can detox these tissues, is by coughing or blowing our nose. But what happens when that mucus is really, really hardened and stagnant? So the body continues to spasm the lungs, but what happens is that we're producing sort of fruitless, dry cough, where you know, our lungs basically explode and nothing comes out. So this could be very difficult on the body. So there are herbs that can help us break up and hydrate this mucus, that it's easier for the body to remove, so that when we cough, the cough is productive. We're actually getting mucus out. And the 3-lung tea or 3-lung tincture is actually really effective for this. And the herbs that are in this herbal blend are basically mullein, pleurisy, and fenugreek. These are easily accessible wherever you are. So you can drink it as tea. You can inhale the steam when you make your tea. And this is gonna really help you to loosen up that hardened, sticky mucus. Now, when we are coughing, it can also be very uncomfortable, especially when we want to sleep during the night. So there are herbs that are actually antispasmodic, will actually help you to calm the spasticity of the lungs. And once again, Dr. Morse has a formula called Spasm Calm, which basically contains herbs like passion flower, St. John wort, lobelia, catnip, wild yam, valerian. So a lot of calming herbs, if you notice. And it's always good to take a combination of things, not just one herb, because herbs always look better in synergy with other like-minded herbs, if you would. And last but not least, I left the lymphatic herbs for the very end of this discussion for a specific reason. So when we have really stagnant, hardened lymph that is difficult to mobilize, lymphatic herbs are really good at breaking it up. However, I would not recommend that you take lymphatic herbs until you have gotten steady kidney filtration. Because if you're taking these herbs and they're starting to mobilize this acidic lymph and then you cannot remove it because your kidneys are not working, you're not going to be very happy. You're going to have pain, you're going to have discomfort, right? So I would be careful with those because some are really strong, like poke root. And I would maybe even recommend them, take them on and off and see how you like it. But first, make sure that your kidneys are filtering. So let me know if you have any questions.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
You know, when we did the process, when we went through the process to be breatharians, they say that the energy when you have this hybrid engine and you live on energy, then the body corrects itself, it heals itself, and you don't need to have to take certain things because you get it from the energy, from energy. So you don't need to take certain, consume certain ingredients or herbs or.
Yes, I agree with you. Everything you're saying is correct. However, getting there can be a long, complicated road. And I can only speak from my experience because I had done a 9-day hard dry fast. And what happens after 3 days, you start to lose the ability to sleep. It becomes very difficult. By day 5, 6, sleep is impossible. I was literally sleeping some days a total of 45 minutes in a 24-hour cycle. And you're not feeling great doing this. It's just that you can't. And it's extremely uncomfortable. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. I didn't know what to do with myself, and I was on fire. And Arik had sent me some videos of people who are practicing this pranic lifestyle. And what they are doing is that not only are they not eating or drinking, but they're also not sleeping. And when I saw this, bells started going off in my mind. I started to make connections. The thing is that it's all about vibrational frequency. At this level, we need sleep, period. And it's not because our physical body can't take it. We need sleep because when we are asleep, that's the only time when we can actually leave the body. So the reason we need sleep is not to let our body rest, but to have our consciousness in an astral body go out into those astral dimensions, because that's where we get the energy from. Do you see? And if we don't have the ability not to sleep, but rather dream, it will cause us to go insane. So this is where I had my aha moment, where I realized that to be a full-on, full-time breatharian, you have to have become a very proficient out-of-body traveler. And you don't have to be asleep to leave your body. You can do this while you're fully awake. And I've done it. There was a time in my life when I was studying with the International Academy of Consciousness, where they teach you how to leave the body. And for over a year, every single day, without fail, I would lay in bed and I would try to leave my body consciously. You do it long enough, you succeed. So you have lucid out-of-body experience. You actually, I mean, these are freaky experiences. One time I've been lifted out of my body by spirit guides, and they lifted me up like this, and they placed me on the back, on the bed next to my body. This is a really trippy experience where you go, oh my God, I am lying next to myself. I don't know what to make of this. You understand? So for a human being to be able to do this automatically, you have to have really evolved as a consciousness beyond the level that we are now, at least beyond the level that I am now. Because let me tell you, that 9-day fast kicked my butt. And it wasn't the hunger and it wasn't the thirst. It was the no sleep, and it was the heat that I couldn't stand. And I was clawing, I realized at one point that I was clawing at my body. I wanted to get out of my skin. So there was this subconscious compulsion to actually leave the body, but I was trying to go about it in the wrong way, you see? So what I realized is the only way for us humans to maintain that type of a lifestyle, we have to learn a few lessons still, because we're still very much conditioned for this physical dimension, but we are growing and we are evolving. To give you some perspective, a channeled being that I really like, named Bashar, had said something very interesting. He said that if a modern human like you and I were to be teleported back in time 300 years ago to people in that timeline, we would appear as luminous light beings.
We've made progress.
Yes, this is how much we have actually evolved in 300 years. So ultimately, we're all evolving toward that. The question is, how long is it going to take us? I'm sure there are some people, and they're probably in single digits out of 7 billion, who can do this. And Dr. Filanov, whose information I follow for dry fasting, gave some examples. Do I think I'm going to be able to do that? I don't know, probably not. But you can, you do the best you can.
So we're on a certain level. I mean, there are different levels, so different people are
Yes.
at different stages.
Yes. And people like that, I imagine, would be able to teleport. When you have that control of the physical body and the astral body, you're actually much less physical, much less dense in your tissues than any other mortal. And I think that if you came across a person like that, you would actually be able to perceive it. I mean, sometimes we meet people who have an aura about them, and they're still very much human, but we feel that they're on a different level. They have a glow about them, a charisma that is very appealing.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine how much more appealing the vibration would be of someone who only consumes prana directly from the universe. And I think that there are still few steps in between before we can actually get there. But I think that we actually have sort of a good start on most people, because we're working toward it. Whereas the majority of Earth population are still eating animals and non-foods that are made from plastic.
But even if we're on that level, we're still, according to you, there's so many toxins. It's scary. I mean, even though
what would happen, you see, when you're on that level, you actually shift realities. You're not really inhabiting this world. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
Okay. So,
well,
all right. So let's say that this reality is a range of frequency from here to here. So on this end, it's at its lowest, and on this end is at its highest. So you have 7 billion people who fall in different places on this scale, right? So we have the really bad murderers and dictators and all these bad people who don't come from a place of love. And then you have some people in between, and then you have people who have reached that, you know, top end of the spectrum, where they're now actually have the ability to move up to the new range, right? And most of the time, each person doesn't have that specific spot where they stay. No, we sort of move back and forth within a certain range. So every person, on top of us being within this range, then every person has their own personal range, where maybe if this is the whole range, maybe you occupy this spot here and somebody else occupies this spot here. And only when our frequencies overlap with other people, when we are in the same range as other beings, we're actually able to perceive them physically. Otherwise, they don't exist. We don't see them, we don't know them, we don't hear from them. So, in order for you to be able to interact with a certain level of reality, you have to be of a certain level of frequency. So if you are a breatharian, you're here, where most of us are here. So what happens, but because this breatharian also fluctuates, right? They're not always at the same level. So when maybe they sort of drop a little bit and you come up a little bit, all of a sudden you become aware of them and you can have an interaction with them. You see? But they actually exist in their own reality. And they're not necessarily in our reality full time. Even though we sort of believe we don't see them, but they're somewhere doing something. And we assume it's in the same world as ours, but it's really not.
But is that breatharians? Is that all about food? I mean, if you the less you eat, the more you're a breatharian, or it's not just because you can.
Well, breatharian means you ingest nothing. Nothing goes in at all. There's no digestion. There's no elimination. That's what breatharianism really is. It means you absorb energy directly from the universe.
But we're at a certain point in between. So what are we called? Pranic livings, or how would you?
We're not pranic yet. As long as we are consuming any food, you're not pranic yet. So people usually go vegetarian, vegan, raw, liquidarian, where it's only like juices, and then we move into pranic. We move into breatharian.
So because I don't know, we've got a WhatsApp group which is called Pranic, but people eat there, and even Ray Maor, Tal Gilboa, they also, so they're not 100% breatharians, but still they're on some level higher.
Yes, so it's all relative. But from my experience, what I can tell you is that when you are not eating or drinking at all, a switch flips. And I don't mean the physical mind, your consciousness. You do start vibrating on a different level. But what this actually causes to happen is that whatever negative energies you still have within you that have not been integrated into the light come up. Whatever fears you have, it's like an explosion of all the stuff that is really unpleasant that normally we don't like to feel, because that's the thing that's still keeping us sort of earthbound here. But when you are not eating, your body naturally wants to raise its vibration, but it can't do that unless these things are released. So what it does, it brings them up to the surface. And then if you can deal with them, then you can sort of almost basically float. But if not, you're going to want to get back in the body. You're going to want to eat. You're going to want to do something to ground yourself because it's extremely unpleasant. Emotionally difficult. You can't stand, like all of a sudden you become irrationally afraid. So imagine you whatever worst fears you have, they become magnified and you feel them, they move through you very quickly. It's like you're getting hit by an avalanche. It's not like normal processing of feelings. It's like somebody has taken the airpin out and it's all just go poof all at once. So that's my experience. So the hardest part of this is dealing with those emotions, those shadow parts of ourselves, because you face it and it's scary because it hits you all at once. You're not releasing them incrementally the way we normally do in therapy or in life when they're triggered, when these feelings are triggered by some events. It's like all of them hit you at once.
So we have a lot of toxins, physical, emotional, and it's hard to get rid of them.
It's not really about getting rid of them when we're talking about emotional stuff. It's more about embracing, because these things are scary for us to look at. I mean, they're literally scary. Like I remember as myself being afraid of not being, and so acutely afraid of certain things that were happening politically. Like I started to hyperventilate, and I never do that. And I had no control over it. I could not regulate these feelings because they were sort of released by, how should I say this? Not by me, but this was triggered by an outside force, which was in a roundabout way. Yes, I did it because I wasn't eating or drinking, but it's that sort of pulled me up vibrationally. And when I was in a higher vibration, all the crap that I had in all of a sudden was, oh, hello, here we are, right? Because everything that is out of alignment with that energy makes itself known. Whatever is not in alignment is going to stand out immediately. And when you feel the extent of your feelings, of what is in there, it's a little scary. Because I was not aware that I was that fearful of certain things. Because, you know, I think I've worked a lot of things through. You know, I meditate, I do this, I do that. I sort of got a handle on this. Oh, not so much.
Yeah, it seems that it never ends. So we've got a long way.
It does. It does end at some point.
It does?
But yeah, but it may take a few more lifetimes.
Oh, not in this lifetime.
May I just add something here?
Yes.
Because we are about the food here. I mean, the food is really like one of the tools that we can use to get really to those vibrations. As we all know, there are many, many sages. They were eating and they were able to go out of their bodies, you know, although they were eating food. So from my experience, the food is really one of the tools. Food is really, really important for this, for those experiences. But it's not the only thing that, you know, if we don't eat, we can travel, we can do this, we can do that, and it's really not like this. And also, if we listen to some experiences of those really pranic people that they don't eat, they also say like this, there are stages. It's not really like you are not eating and you are there. So this is really like a tool that we can use to just yeah, go deeper and go higher.
But I'm not saying that in order to leave the body, you have to not eat. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I can leave my body consciously and I eat, okay? But eating does lower our vibration. But at the same time, it's appropriate for the vibration we are in. So it's all relative, you see?
Yeah.
Ivana,
Yes.
you were talking about parasites, and I
Yes.
wanted to ask how long can they survive if a person changes their diet, let's say in the direction of being raw, but they don't do specific anti-parasite cleanses without herbs. But let's say a person has been on raw foodist for like 4 or 5 years. Do they are they still there, or they just die naturally by themselves? Because we can also see many examples of raw foodists who get back to cooked foods and to back to their cravings even after a few years on raw food. So could you please elaborate on that?
Do you know who Hildy Larson is? She is also a health coach. And this woman had been a fruitarian, raw fruitarian, no cheating, nothing. Was it 13, 14 years now? A few months back. So this woman, it's nothing but fruit. And a few months back, in the middle of the night, she wakes up because she senses things in her body. And there's a worm, a live, round worm, this big, is making a run for it. Is trying to leave her body. And this was during a dry fast, actually. She said that she was doing a 4-day dry fast. And in the middle of the night, this critter finally decided that it was time for him to go. Was it 12, 13 years later? They can live and survive for a very, very long time, even if you don't give them food. So that is scary. I'd rather kill them and have them dead. I will not survive having something living coming out of me like it's, like in the movie Alien. I just can't do it. Sorry. I will take the herbs, I will kill them dead and have them leave me that way. I can't. Just not for me. And this woman had done parasite cleanses. That's another thing. She's someone who does herbs. And this is not the first instance this has happened. 5 years into being a fruitarian, and I think 8 years into being raw, she had another thing crawl out of her, also live.
If I can say something,
Yes.
I also heard about several 40-day fasts or even less, and towards the end of 40, before that, people were extending it because they were finding the parasites coming out of their butt. So I think that's about how long it takes on just water about 40 days so they can leave the body. That's what I heard from maybe 3 people who've done it about.
Well,
yeah.
somebody should have told Hildy's guys, because they were there for 13 years. They did not get the memo.
Yeah, so he just crawled out of her anus, or how did it leave the
Yep.
body?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Mm.
And she felt it move. It woke her up in the middle of the night, and she ran to the bathroom, and there it was. She had to pull it out, and she talked about this, and she took pictures, and I was like, oh my God, this is not for me.
Unbelievable. Okay,
Yes.
my second question, you also mentioned this test of sediment in the urine. You
Yes.
just pee in the jar and then you wait for 20
Mhm.
minutes. But for example, if the person drinks high amounts of water,
Mhm.
is it the same, or because if you drink high amounts of water, your urine will automatically be clearer, so it makes sense. So what is the ratio between the amounts of water you should drink in order to perform this particular test?
Well, personally, I don't recommend that people drink a lot of water. Okay, it does not hydrate the body at all. And it makes the kidneys work really hard. I don't drink water hardly at all. I mostly drink juices, and once in a while, if I have to take my herbs and I just need like a sip of water to help them go down, I'll do that, but I don't actually drink water, or unless I make herbal teas. Yes, it will be diluted, but you will still see sediment. And what will happen, you maybe will see sediment once a day, and then it will get progressively lighter and clearer, because you will have had your main dump, and then whatever remains is going to be more diluted. But you should see at least something, at least once a day, if you're eating.
Okay, good, good. Okay, and the next question is like when you say it's actually the question related directly to our subject of herbs. So when you are saying I'm taking my herbs, like for the person, like what does it mean? Are you taking them fresh, or in tinctures, in teas? Just think about the person who hasn't known anything about it, or almost anything. So what does it mean to take your herbs?
Well, I would say all of the above. If you can get a fresh herb, obviously that is optimal. And some of them you can. You can find dandelion greens, plantain. You can actually forage for some herbs, go into the woods and pick wild herbs. That would be the best. If you don't have the ability to do that, then you can take them either as tinctures or in capsules or powdered. These days I take my herbs mostly in powdered form because I buy them in bulk. It's just cheaper that way. It's more cost effective. So, and I'll just add them to a smoothie or a juice, and I will take them that way. But you can take them in a capsule or a tincture. Now, certain methods of delivery, well, all methods of deliveries will have both pros and cons. So with tinctures, most of them are alcohol based. And if you are taking a lot of them, some people take, between 5 and 12 things. I got drunk on tinctures because I don't drink alcohol. I have zero tolerance. And here I was at work, and I'm taking 2 droppers of each tinctures, 5 of them. And all of a sudden I'm going, the room is spinning. I go, whoa, Nelly. Okay. Now, you can burn off the alcohol, or you can do a glycerin tincture, but glycerin tinctures are not as strong. And whereas an alcohol tincture gets into your system really quickly, a glycerin tincture has to be digested. But taking herbs in liquid form as tinctures is better for people who have compromised digestion, whether their pancreas isn't working or they're malabsorbed. They're so backed up in the intestinal wall that they cannot absorb the herbs if they're taking in a powder form, right? So then tincture would be a better way to go about it. But at the same time, a tincture doesn't have the same potency as whole dry herb. And whole dry herb doesn't have the same potency as fresh herb, right? So even though taking dry herb, be it in powder form or in capsule, is actually stronger, more effective, you have to have digestion. You have to have absorption and utilization to be able to get benefits from taking that herb. And it also will take longer, obviously, to get into your system. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and what about teas?
Teas are great. I love teas. You can drink them all throughout the day. I like that. They are not as potent as whole herbs or tinctures, really. You don't get as much good stuff out of the herb when you cook it. So you lose some of the benefit right then and there. But they are a cheaper alternative. They're cheaper, they last longer, so more cost effective, because these herbs can add up and become really expensive, especially if you're getting organic or wildcrafted.
Good, good. And another question is, if a person, like just imagine you have a person in front of you who hasn't done any of these herbal things, and now they want to start from somewhere because it's a it's a wide subject and it might be overwhelming for someone who doesn't know. So where would you advise them to start?
Well, are you asking how I would approach a client, what I would tell them to do in terms of taking herbs? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, yes. You mentioned the adrenals, you mentioned kidney filtration, you mentioned bowel movements, and huge variety of herbs related to balancing. So yeah, so where to start?
Well, you always start with the diet. That's the first thing you have to be focused on. You change the diet, and then when I work with people, I look at their weaknesses, I look at their eyes, and I see what issues they have. We, fill out a questionnaire. What are the symptoms? What are you dealing with? What glands are down? What things do we need to focus on most? But everybody, no matter what, we work with the bowels, we work with the kidneys, adrenals, and then the lymphatic system to get it moving. And of course, there are other things you can do, go to the sauna, do dry brushing to open up the skin. To move lymph without herbs, you have to exercise, you have to move the body, because that movement is what creates the movement of lymph as well. That's why when we wake up in the morning, we're full of mucus. We have crust in our eyes. Why? Because we have been in the same position. We haven't been moving. So that lymph that normally is sort of mobile, it's sort of all that is there where it is. And we find it when we wake up where it's sort of stagnated, right? And then we start to move around and things start to flow again. That's why when we wake up, we're also very stiff. I don't know if you ever tried to exercise immediately when you wake up. It's actually not so easy. You start to realize how stiff you are and how hard it is for you to move. So movement, being out in the sun, and the diet. And then you can add herbs, but the diet has to come first.
Great. Yeah. Okay, friends.
Okay, one another one, please. Ivana, thank you. I'm so grateful for this Zoom today. Really, really grateful. Thank you. Although I am using herbs basically all of my life, so I know a few of them, but I never did like really fully cleansing of, you know, with these herbs. I'm using them from time to time, you know, when I see something goes wrong, or I need to be a little more calm, I start to use some ashwagandha or so. So what I wanted to ask you, you know, it really makes sense, everything you said. So what, do I really need to go to read Dr. Moore's book, or do you maybe have some short notes maybe to send us, you know, for these basic plants or herbs that could help us to, for example, for the kidneys, you're explaining, you know, different kind of. You're frozen, or I'm frozen.
So you're frozen.
I'm frozen. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
Back.
Now it's fine.
Okay. So just you know, different kind of, maybe from your experiences, if you have some notes, you know, for basic things that we can use.
I don't have any notes. I mean, you're going to be able to go back and listen to this video again because Arik is going to post it on YouTube. So you can hear again the herbs that I mentioned. And as I said, there's so many herbs for different conditions that you can find online just by doing a search, right? You don't need to tell me that. That is something you can find on your own. You can also go and look up Dr. Morse's herbs and see what herbs he has in each formula. And because this is what I do, because his herbs are too expensive for me. You get a bottle of a tincture that's $27 and it lasts you less than 2 weeks. That gets expensive. So what I do, I get the herbs that are already, I know he uses, plus some others, because I like to mix things up, and your body is going to like it too, right? So try different things. Some things work better than others, even with his formulas. Like Kidney 3 is my favorite. It works the best for me, better than the other ones that I've tried. But it's always the basics: bowels, kidneys, adrenals, lymph. He talks about, he has these kits called the Fab Four, because this is the most basic bare minimum to get you going. Because if you are really lymphatically backed up, your kidneys are not filtering, your bowels are not moving, you're going to need help. And the herbs will do that. And once again, my point here is not to get people to start taking herbs for the rest of their lives. These are temporary things because it's the body that does the healing. We simply create optimal conditions for it to heal. So when we refine our diet to the least obstructive foods like fruit, then the body has the room to breathe, where it can actually sort of get some cleaning and healing done. And the herbs are there just to help us along until we detox enough that our glands and organs can do their work without any help. For example, I'm on this journey more than 3 years and I still have problems. So I still need some help, because if I don't take them, then I don't feel well. I have things that are going to interfere with my daily life. So these are basically just helpers. I don't use herbs in terms of treatment. You can't think of this as treating symptoms, because then you get stuck in the symptoms. This is about cleaning your body and getting it fully healed. And while the body is in the process of doing that, you're simply helping it along. You're giving it a little extra support so that it can actually do what you need it to do and take you from point A to point B. Does that answer your question?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You're fascinating. You have so much knowledge.
Uh,
You've only done that for 3 years, and you've got all that knowledge.
because I've tried a lot of things. I've tried Listen, I've tried a lot of different things, and a lot of them were bad things. So it's a mixed bag. This is how we learn. I mean, for crying out loud, I used to drink bleach because I thought that this was going to heal me. I don't know if you ever heard of the, what's it called? The MMS, mineral miracle solution. Oh, it cures cancer, cures this. I did it. Them nearly killed me. So
I did it
this
too.
is, yeah, this is how I know what I know is because I've done a bunch of dumb stuff in my life, and I learned not to do it, and I learned a better way. So I'm telling other people to keep them from making the mistakes that I made and saving them some pain and heartache.
Thank you very much, then,
Yeah,
for sharing your experience and knowledge with us.
you're welcome.
Okay, Ivana.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. It was fascinating, the information, and I'm sure we'll want to repeat listen to it again and again, maybe to get the formulas, to know the herbs and to get the information, and much more people than those that are present here will benefit from it because it will be posted on YouTube. So thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
we will finish for now.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.